Okay, so we've talked a lot about value proposition, and I want you to take a look at this business model canvas. And I use this to show you how all these elements really fit together. And really having an understanding of the business model is going to allow you to really have an understanding of what's going on in the business and how it works. And by having that deeper understanding of how it works, it's going to allow you to better develop and understand how you can deliver and communicate value better to your customers. And so really it's the essence of marketing, and that's why the cool part of this is that value proposition, which is the essence of the front part of marketing, is going to be really the center point of this business model. So let's go through it real quickly, and then I'll run through an example, and we can go from there. Okay, you have to offer value to somebody, and in this case it's really our target and target customer, and it's really this part of the model is describing who we're offering value to. Simple as that. Okay, the channel piece of the business model really looks at how we're delivering value to a particular customer segment or customer. So really we reach, our value proposition, right, our offer is delivered to our customers through the channel. Right? So it's really that straight line to the customer. The customer relationship piece of the model really is trying to understand that customer acquisition and retention and what is actually the relationship that we have established with a particular customer segment. Okay, revenue stream, really, this is probably the important one for most people, and really this is just showing in this model is like how we're going to make money. The core capabilities piece is like what do we need to do in order to make money? What are the capabilities that we have? The value configuration component really is what are the set of activities that we have and we've put together in order to deliver our value proposition. For most companies, the set of activities that we can do at a company are really not enough to deliver value, and so for many companies we need additional partners or other players that help us deliver value and let us leverage our overall business model. So from a summary standpoint, looking at all of these pieces together, really this is a really simple model, and really looking at it and really having that understanding allows you to know what's going on in the business. Okay, and looking at it holistically, so we've had like all the different elements. Now let's bring them back together and you can look at it real quick in the different boxes. We have our infrastructure box on one side, we have our value proposition, which is our offer to the customer, and we have the customer components in terms of customer relationship, channel, and the target customer. And the bottom really represents the profit side in terms of our cost structure on one side and our revenue stream. And so really on the cost structure on one side is that it costs some money for us to do some things that deliver value, and then the value we're providing we're going to get money back for, and hopefully that revenue stream amount is going to be greater than what it costs to deliver that particular value. So for us to really understand, typically what you do is you do this on a clean sheet of paper, and I do this as an exercise in different classes where students are going to actually document the business model of a particular business. And so in order to do that, you're going to have some certain things that you understand. And really the center point, like we talked about, is what's your value proposition? You need to have an understanding of who your customers are. Understand the dynamics of the relationship with those customers, how we're currently reaching the customers, and what channels do we use. So having those kind of lets you fill in the boxes, if you will, to understand this business model and how that business model works, and for us as a company, how we're delivering value to our customers. The other elements in terms of how you build it up is what are the resources, what do we have as a company, what do we possess, what activities that we perform, who are our partners, and then the revenue like we talked about, what is the cost structure. And so if you look at this parallels a lot of things that we're going to go through, and really what this kind of can go into your 5 C's analysis. It can go into your 5 forces. There's different elements that you've probably been exposed to that are embedded in this business model. But what the business model does is it gives you a really holistic picture of how these things work together. And the other cool thing about the business model, it looks at, so like you might be a finance person, you might be an accounting person, you might be a supply chain person, you might be a marketing person. But it really looks at what are the different play of these functional areas and how it works for a particular company to deliver value to a customer. So how do they deliver on their value proposition? So here's an example. So let's just run through like how, if we were going to have like an exercise to go through and say, okay, how does this work for a real business? So let's pick a business, and in this case, let's pick a professional soccer team. So or a pro sports team, it would work the exact same way. And so the first question that I'm going to ask, or you want to ask, is, remember the center point, what value proposition do you offer? Which customer segments? So think about this for a second. And so you're a professional sports team in terms of what's the value proposition that you offer. So we can talk about that value proposition, what's the value proposition, but then to link it into our model, we need to understand how does that value proposition, who does the value proposition matter to? And that's really our customer segments. So in this case, the example shows like, so we're a great offensive soccer team, right? So that's one that everyone would probably think of in pro sports. That's the game itself. But what is the other element that matters? And so the other element here in this case is, yeah, but we also have a stadium. So we have advertising space and we're high visibility. So one of our things that we're offering in a value proposition is really good soccer, offensive soccer, and really that's delivering it to fans, right? But we're also providing value to advertisers. We're providing advertising space and visibility and excitement that's going to connect that so advertisers can connect with fans. But we're providing that vehicle for them. So really having two particular value propositions that we're talking about here. So we know our value proposition, we know who our customers are, or we know our value propositions. So the question becomes now is like, how do we reach our customers? So going back to the different elements of the model, so we have the offer, our value proposition, 1 and 2, and then how do we communicate and what's our distributing in terms of how we're distributing value to the customers and to who. So that's kind of taking it back into the different parts. And if you look at it in this case, we have the value proposition, great soccer, advertising space, but how do we do that? So really, we can't just, we know who we're going to deliver it to, fans and advertisers, but how do we do that? Well, in this case, we know we have a stadium, right? So we have a box office so people can come and watch the soccer. But we also, another vehicle might be, we have TV, right? We might have mobile phone, you can watch it visually. So that's actually geared to the fans in terms of how we're delivering value to the fans. But look at the advertising. Let's take that as another element. How do we do that? So, well, we need a sales force to do that. We need a sales force that's going to go knock on doors and talk to advertisers and say, hey, we're a good option for you to connect to a particular audience. So that's kind of taking it down in terms of how we're delivering across those two different value propositions. Okay, the other elements on this is how we're going to build relationships and really looking at it from our relationship model. Again, value proposition at the center to our particular target customers. And remember, you can have multiple target customers. You have different groups, and you just think through that. We have different segments, but we can have multiple targets. So back to this case, in terms of this example, our model looks like we have spectacular offensive soccer, and then what are we going to do? We're going to have a personalized website that we can do ticketing. We're going to have a team blog. We're going to have a podcast, whatever it's going to be, but we're delivering value for different elements of value to our customers. Okay, again, the important question is how do you make money? So if you look at it it's like, how do you make money? And so there's probably different examples that you guys know, but we want to understand what our revenue stream is, where are our sources of revenue, how we're going to extract value for the value that we're providing. So we know that we're communicating to two different target customer segments we talked about, but we want to see is what are the ways that we can create revenue. So in this case, really, we talked about spectacular soccer, 1, advertising space, high visibility. And so how do we make money? Okay, ticket sales to fans, TV channel subscriber fees, mobile phone TV fees, subscriber fees. So all those are really in terms of delivering that value to the fans. We're going to get money back from that. And then from our sales force, we know that advertisers are going to pay us to take advantage of our really cool space and high visibility and access to their potential customers. So if you look at this in the big picture, this is really taking this business model and actually populating it with the elements that we talked about in this example of a pro soccer team. So by looking at this, you can have a really understanding of, okay, what's the center, what's the value proposition, really how do our customers work, and on the other side, the infrastructure. What's the set of activities or what are the things that we need to do in order for us to deliver on that value to our target customers? And again, I've said this before, but I'll say it real quickly again. The set of activities that we do on the infrastructure side costs money. It costs money to have that set of activities in terms of us to create value and deliver value. And hopefully what's happening is our revenue side, what we're making for delivering that value, is higher than the cost side. That's how we make money. So again, simplistic model, but it really gives you an understanding of really how value propositions work in relation to an entire business. So again, simple model, but very powerful. And so I want you to think about it in these terms, and it really will help you have an understanding of how actually value proposition is at the center of a business model and how it works. And that's really going to be important in terms of how we talk about marketing, because marketing is all about creating, communicating, and capturing value. And that all is evident and exists in this model itself. Okay, so let's go back to marketing strategies for a second. Really, remember, marketing strategies focus on value. Really, three elements of that. Our model is really creating value, capturing and communicating value, and communicate and collect value. So really, we have knowledge that creates, or some capabilities that create the value proposition, and our segments that who might find value in what we offer, and the target in particular, or is the best fit of that value. And then how we communicate value is in our positioning, right? So our positioning is really executed in the marketing mix. And one other thing that we've talked about that we could maybe substitute for marketing mix is our touch points. How we communicate value to our target market is through our touch points. Okay, let's talk about value for a second. Remember, value is delivered through the business model, right? So we've talked about value, and value is kind of the center point, and we talked about value proposition is residing at the center, but value is created and delivered to customers through the business model. But the interesting thing here is the business model itself, how that all fits together and how that whole model works can be the source of competitive advantage. So you've read several articles that really this relates to. So if you look at the Michael Pardo article, What is Strategy? You look at Southwest Airlines, right? In terms of the set of activities that Southwest Airlines does, that's actually the source of competitive advantage because everything they do is geared towards delivering the value they've decided to provide to their customers. So what they do all fits together, and that becomes the source of competitive advantage. Walmart early on, remember? We talked about this a little bit, but Walmart, in terms of the things they did, their infrastructure and the way they lowered their cost because their supply chain was so efficient, et cetera. They were able to pass that on to the consumer, which is really the essence of their business model, was to provide low prices. So remember, value proposition is the center point of a business model, but it's really important to have that understanding because the things that you do in terms of how it fits as a business model is your source of competitive advantage. And when we talk marketing strategies, that's what we're going to be talking about, is how do we communicate that value to our potential customers, right? So create, communicate, and capture value. That's what we're going to talk about. So just to close this out, right? So creating value requires infrastructure. But infrastructure has cost associated with it. What matters is that our cost structure is going to be less than what we're receiving from delivering that value in our revenue.